الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله. اللهم لك الحمد حتى ترضى ولك الحمد إذا رضيت ولك الحمد بعد رضا. Dear brothers and sisters in Islam, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. We are in day 10, walhamdulillah. We're about to finish day 10 in Ramadan and start the 11th of Ramadan. And this is great ni'mah from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and great blessings from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. As for juz' number 10, alhamdulillah, is going to be between Surah Al-Anfal and Surah At-Tawbah. Some of the ulama, you've noticed that Surah At-Tawbah doesn't start with Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Some of the ulama said they thought that Surah Al-Anfal and Surah At-Tawbah may have been one surah. And if you look at the length of the surah, both Surah Al-Anfal and Surah At-Tawbah compared to the surahs before them, they are very short in length compared to the surahs before them. But Allah knows best the order of the Quran. Uthman ibn Affan radiallahu anhu wardah, he did the best he could in putting the order of the Quran the way it is. And there's a lot of things has been said with regard to this, but this is the order that Allah have decreed and we accepted, alhamdulillah. In Surah Al-Anfal we said Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala spoke extensively about Ghazwat Badr and the Battle of Badr and the factors that led to the victory. And then in Surah At-Tawbah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to expose the hypocrites and the scandal of the hypocrites when it comes to their behavior and attitude toward Islam and toward Muslims. As for juz' number 10, there's about approximately 127 verses in that juz'. And like I said, we're going to finish Surah Al-Anfal and start Surah At-Tawbah. Surah Al-Anfal from verse 41 to verse 75. And then Surah At-Tawbah, and it's going to be from verse 1 to 92. And if you are using the Quran, 604 pages, it's pages 182 to 201. You've noticed when I put those pages, I wanted to show you that approximately every juz' is about 20 pages. That's why some people go with that rough, understanding of what each juz' is. As for Surah Al-Anfal, the lateral part of Surah Al-Anfal is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to talk about, the reasons that the nations before us have been destroyed, why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala destroyed them, okay? And how should, the bounties of war should be distributed. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said 1/5 of it to the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam and the Qur'an al-Masakin and so forth and so on. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told the lateral parts of Surah Al-Anfal is going to talk about Sifatul Kafirin wa Kafiyat Mu'amalatum, what are the characteristics of the disbelievers and how should we deal with them. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to finish the surah, show the strength of Islam, ending the surah in a very, very high note and show that Islam have gained strength and the strength of Islam. And as for Surah At-Tawbah, inshallah ta'ala, this is the portion we're going to stop at verse actually 90. So we're going to include some of those topics of Surah At-Tawbah. But the main theme of it is really the scandal of the hypocrites, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to give us, we're going to find out there is a really good comparison Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put in between the hypocrites and the believers, and that's the theme we're going to try to probably touch upon and try to further our understanding of both surahs. Okay, as for Surah Al-Anfal, like we said, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the blessings and fulfillment of the covenant of Islam. This is a theme that He ends the surah with. As for Surah At-Tawbah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to really deal with the hypocrites in all aspects of it. As for what we're trying to understand, really, the best I can bring for us today, really, to develop this analogy, these are verses in Surah At-Tawbah, verses 71, 72, and 67 and 68. 67 and 68, Allah dealt with the hypocrites. And in verse 71 and 72, Allah dealt with the believers. And if you look at the structure of the ayats, let's talk about a little bit of the structure of the ayats. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, with regard to the hypocrites, al-munafiquna wal-munafiqat. With the believers, He said, al-mu'minuna wal-mu'minat. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is addressing both hypocrites from terms of males and females. Al-munafiquna, the male females. Al-munafiqatu, the female hypocrites. Al-mu'minuna wal-mu'minat, the male believers and the female believers. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala started giving them attributes. And the analogy, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talked about their, what will be the ending. And to give you an example, ba'duhum min ba'd, they are one another. Ba'duhum, and as with regard to the believers, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, ba'duhum awliya'u ba'd, they are allied to one another. With regard to the hypocrites, يأمرون بالمنكر وينهون عن المعروف. They encourage each other to do bad, evil stuff and forbid the good stuff. With regard to the believers, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reversed it. وَيَأْمُرُونَ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ وَيَنْهَوْنَ عَنِ الْمُنكَرِ. They encourage each other to do good and forbid evil. And if you look at the ending of those two ayats, just to give you the analogy, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, إِنَّ الْمُنَافِقِينَ هُمُ الْفَاسِقُونَ. Indeed, the munafiqeen, they are the what? The one that are corrupt, the one that cause mischief. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, with regard to the believers, He said, أُولَٰئِكَ سَيَرْحَمُهُمُ اللَّهِ إِنَّ اللَّهَ عَزِيزٌ حَكِيمٌ. Indeed, those Allah will grant them His mercy, and indeed Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is mighty and powerful and has wisdom behind His power and majesty. So these are some of the analogy, but to really bring the picture for us really together, I put a table together, really just comparing those things. So to really go quickly through it, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, with regard to the hypocrites, He said, one another, versus the believers, ally to one another. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said about the hypocrites, enjoy what is wrong and forbid what is right. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said with regard to the believers, enjoy what is right and forbid what is wrong. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, they close their hand, they don't spend in the cause of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. While He described the believers, establish prayers and give in zakat. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describing the hypocrites, they have forgotten Allah, wal-iyadu billah. So He has forgotten them. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as with regard to the believers, He said, obey Allah and His messenger. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, definitely disobedience. The hypocrites are the definite disobedience. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned that in the Quran. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala described the believers, Allah will have mercy upon them. So this is what we said, Ar-Rahmatul Wasila, okay, Ar-Rahmatul Al-Khasa, that is specific to the believers. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, with regard to the hypocrites, Allah has promised the hypocrites men and hypocrites women and the disbelievers. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in this particular verse have combined the hypocrite men and women and the disbelievers all in one. What did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala promise them and the disbelieving men? The fire of hell. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala promised them that they will be punished, and definitely they will abide in it, and they will for eternity. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, what did He promise? Allah promised the believing men and believing women gardens beneath which rivers flow, Jannatin tajri min tahtiha al-anhar, wherein there will be internally in this Jannah, and they will be pleased and they will dwell in it with pleasure. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said Allah has cursed the hypocrites, while Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala approved, okay, the believers have received approval from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said that the hypocrites will endure punishment, while the believers will have a great attainment from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or a great reward from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So in Surah At-Tawbah, as you read through the surah, or you go back and revise it again, and if you remember some of those ayats, this powerful analogy between the believers and the hypocrites. So we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us among those believers that inshallah ta'ala will adhere to the ayats of that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in describing those believers. So don't forget this, and this is a very, very important month to you and I. This is the month of Ramadan after all, in which we should take care of our sadaqat. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala described the believers what? Establish a prayer and give zakat. While the hypocrites what? They become miser and they close their hands. So this is from the ni'mah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to continue to guide us to the haqq. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to continue to protect us and save us from this wabā. And know and understand, dear brothers and sisters, with taqwa of Allah and patience, inshallah ta'ala, relief will come soon. وبهذا سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.